A very good evening, aspirants. I welcome you all to the daily newspaper analysis brought to you by the Shankar IAS Academy. Today's date is March 29, 2024. Here I have displayed the list of articles which we are going to discuss today. Friends, you can see here that we have compiled important exam related topics from the various newspapers like Hindu, Express and Business Standards. So kindly watch the entire video and try to answer the quiz question in the later part of our discussion. So without having any delay, now let us get started. According to this news article, yesterday, the Union Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change directed the departments of Arunachal Pradesh and Assam to prepare a proposal to notify the Dulung Subanshree Elephant Corridor. See, it is located downstream of the 2000 megawatt Lower Subanshree hydroelectric project. Including this corridor as a part of the legally notified protected area will provide legal sanctity to the elephant corridors. See, this is the crux of the article. In this context, let us quickly go through the basics of elephant corridor and elephant reserves from the preliminary perspective. Firstly, we shall see about elephant corridors. See, the elephant corridors are the strip of land that allows the elephant to move between two or more habitats. See, it plays a crucial role in facilitating the movement of elephant population between the larger habitats. Thereby, it will increase their survival and birth rates. Now, let us see who will notify this corridor. See, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and state forest departments work together to identify the elephant corridors and notify the state governments and UTs about them. As of 2023, there are 150 elephant corridors across the 15 elephant range states. It was up from 88 in the 2010. Okay, now with this, let us move on to the second part of the discussion, that is with respect to elephant reserves. See, in order to protect the elephant, their habitats, migration routes, addressing the issues related to man-animal conflict, and also to ensure the welfare of the elephants which were captivity, the Government of India established Project Elephant as a centrally sponsored scheme in 1992. Know that the elephant reserves were established towards this end. There are 33 elephant reserves spread over 10 elephant landscapes in 14 states. Now, who notifies the elephant reserves? See, the state governments of the elephant range states can propose the conservation areas to be declared as the elephant reserves. Then, the steering committee, chaired by the Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change, approves this notification. Know that both the elephant reserve and the elephant corridors are essentially administrative classification. So, they don't promise greater protection of the elephant habitats because they are not recognized by any law. According to the WPA Act 1972, a protected area can be of national park, wildlife sanctuary, conservation reserve or community reserve. The prohibited activities in the protected areas like mining, oil and gas drilling, dams are permissible in the elephant reserves. So, governments can divert the elephant reserves and corridors for the various projects. See, these are some prelims relevant facts that you have to remember about elephant corridor and elephant reserves. So, with this basic info, let us move on to the next news article of the day. Look at this news article. The Ministry of Home Affairs extended the Armed Forces Special Power Act or AFSPA in parts of Nagaland and Arunachal Pradesh for 6 more months. Moreover, AFSPA is extended in 8 districts and 21 police stations in 5 other districts. This is the crux of the article. In this context, let us discuss in detail about Armed Forces Special Power Act or AFSPA. See, Armed Forces Special Power Act 1958 was a special legislation created to maintain peace in the disturbed areas. The objective of this act was to allow the armed forces to aid the civil administration in the peace-disturbed areas. Since its enactment, the act was made applicable not only to the northeastern states and Jammu and Kashmir, but it also got applied in the Punjab and Chandigarh. Here note that Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Chandigarh had separate armed forces act to deal with them. Now let us see which are the areas where AFSPA is currently applicable. See, the areas includes 30 plus districts in 4 different states of India. They are Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland and Manipur. Also see that the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir has a separate Armed Forces Jammu and Kashmir Special Power Act which got enacted in the year 1990. Note that it was enacted in the wake of growing insurgency in the Kashmir Valley. Now with this basics, now let us see the historical evolution of the current AFSPA. See, AFSPA was first enacted in line with the ordinance of the pre-independence era called Armed Forces Special Power Ordinance of 1942. By now, after looking at the year, you would have guessed why this ordinance was enacted. It's right. It was the ordinance which was used by the British to suppress the then growing Quit India movement. This is all with the background of the act. Now, let us move on to see the important provisos of the Act. See, according to the Act, armed forces means the forces of the Union government. Here note that it does not include the state police force. Secondly, under the Act, Section 2 Clause B provides an area to be declared as a disturbed area. According to the Act, the whole or part of a state can be declared as a disturbed area. Now, coming to who can declare an area as disturbed area. See, Section 3 of the Act says that governor of a state or administrator in case of UT or the union government can declare an area as a disturbed area. Now coming on to see the most important provisos. See, Section 4 of the AFSPA deals with a special power conferred to the armed forces. See, it allows even for the non-commissioned officer to fire or use force to cause even death against a persons who act against the law and order which was in place at that time. Moreover, it also confers special powers to the armed forces to search and even arrest the person based on mere suspicion. Also, it prohibits the assembly of 5 or more persons in the disturbed areas. Now coming on to the Section 6 of the article, it protects the officers from civil litigation against any of the act done by them in pursuance of this Armed Forces Special Power Act. See, this is all with respect to the provisions of the AFSPA. Okay. Now moving on to see the significance of the Act. This Act was enacted at an important time when the Naga insurgency was at its peak in the 1950s. With the Act, it aided the armed forces in proactively maintaining the offensive stand against the hostile insurgents in the areas that has very different and difficult terrain. Moreover, in times of growing calls to repeal the Act, we also have to remember that individual freedom has to be balanced with the freedom of other individuals and moreover with reasonable demands of the community and the general public. See, this is all regarding the significance of the AFSPA. Now, coming on to the arguments which was posed against this law. See, people of Northeast view AFSPA as a draconian act. In the famous case of Extrajudicial Execution Victim Families Association of Manipur versus Union of India, it was contended that there were 1,500 plus fake encounters in Manipur which were taken place between 1980 to 2010 because of AFSPA. Apart from fake encounters, there have been reported instances of sexual violence against the women by the armed forces. Moreover, people of Northeast want AFSPA to be repealed to bring down the instances of these violations. This is all regarding the discussion. In this discussion, we saw about the provisions of the AFSPA, and the second part we saw about the significance and the criticism of this act. With these learned points, let us conclude our discussion and take up the next news article for our analysis. This article from the Indian Express newspaper talks about the discrepancies in the measurement of gross domestic product or GDP. See, this article specifically talks about the references to deflators which are used to calculate the real quantities that makes up the net indirect taxes. See, this is the crux of the article. In our discussion, let us understand about the changes brought to the computation of GDP using our mains answer writing practice. Let me read the question for you. Explain the difference between the computing methodology of India's GDP before the year of 2015 and after the year of 2015. This question will be asked in the GS paper 3 under the syllabus which is mentioned here. See, the only keyword in this question is explain. So you are expected to explore deep into the topic and cover all aspects of the topic. Since this question here asks for differences, you can draw a tabular column and explain the differences between the each parameters. Okay, this is how we are gonna answer this question. In the introduction part, you can write about GDP. You can write like this. Gross domestic product or GDP is the measure of the total value of goods and services produced within the country's border over a specific period of time. See, it serves as a crucial metric for assessing the overall health and growth of the economy. In 2015, a new series was announced to calculate the India's GDP by upgrading the methodology with new data sources to meet the standards of the United Nations. See, some of the differences between the computational methodology of India's GDP before 2015 and after 2015 are as follows. See, this way you can give a link to the body part of the answer. Okay, moving on to the body part of the answer. Here you can write like this. Firstly, with change in the base year. See, prior to 2015, the base year for the calculation of GDP was 2004-2005. Post 2015, this base got updated to 2011-2012. So this change was done to align the calculation of GDP with the global practices and thereby capturing the economic information in an accurate manner. Secondly, replacing factor cost with market prices. Previously, GDP at factor cost was calculated. So GDP at factor cost measures the total value of goods and services produced within the country's economic border, but it does not include taxes which are imposed on this product, and moreover it does not include subsidies which are given to it. Post 2015, the international practice of GDP at market prices and for sector-wise estimation, GVA or gross value added at basic price has been adopted. So the new measures include not only the cost of production, but also it will calculate product subsidies and taxation. Thirdly, with respect to the broadening the database, see, the performance of the manufacturing sector was previously evaluated using the data from IIP, Index of Industrial Production, and ASI, Annual Survey of Industries, which has about 2 lakh companies. But post 2015, the firm's annual accounts filed with the MCA or Ministry of Corporate Affairs are used, which includes around 5 lakh companies. See, the shift aimed to provide a more comprehensive and detailed representation of the manufacturing sector in India. Fourthly, with respect to the calculation of labor income. See, prior to 2015, there was no difference in the way labor income for different kinds of labor was being calculated. The new series has used a concept called effective labor input. That is, different weights are assigned on whether one was a owner, a hired professional, or a helper. This change aimed to provide a more nuanced assessment of the labor income. Fifthly, larger cover of agriculture and financial sectors. Earlier, only the farm produce was considered as a proxy of agricultural income. Post 2015, value addition in agriculture, including other factors like livestock data, are also will be considered. Similarly, the financial sector now includes stockbrokers, stock exchangers, AMCs, mutual funds, pension funds, as well as regulatory bodies. See, this change aimed to capture the income generated by a broader range of financial institutions and activities. So you can write all these points in the main body of the answer. Moving on to the conclusion part, here you can write like this. These were the changes recommended by the United Nations System of National Accounts in 2008 to make Indian GDP growth numbers comparable with that of the developed nations in the future, and moreover it will align India's GDP calculation with the international parlances. Subsequently, the above changes were done to the GDP calculation of India, so we can say that the new methodology is statistically more robust as it incorporates a broader range of indicators including consumption, employment, and enterprises' performance. It also takes into account the factors that are more responsive to the current changes, making the estimation process more accurate and dynamic. See, this is all about the discussion. In this discussion, we saw about the methodology for calculating our GDP. With these basic points, let us move on to the next news article. Look at this news article. The Reserve Bank of India's Monetary Policy Committee or MPC is expected to maintain the policy repo rate at 6.5%. See, the MPC is likely to stick with the policy stance of withdrawal of accommodation after its meeting on April 5. See, this is the crux of the article. In this context, let us learn about an important economic institution called Monetary Policy Committee or MPC. See, the MPC is a committee of the Reserve Bank of India or RBI. Know that it is responsible for deciding the benchmark policy interest rate, that is repo rate. We all know that repo rate is a weapon with which RBI fights inflation and control it within the specified target level. See, before MPC was established, RBI governor used to make monetary policy decisions with the help of a technical advisory committee. But now the decision-making process has become more professional, transparent, and accountable through the committee-based approach. See, the idea of setting up MPC has been discussed for quite some time. Various committees and reports have been formulated in this regard. See, they said that a committee-based approach would bring more transparency and accountability to the monetary policy decisions. Finally, in 2015, the RBI and the Indian government have signed the Monetary Policy Framework Agreement, which led to the establishment of MPC. Okay, this is about the history of the formation of MPC. Now, let us see about the functions of MPC. See, the functions of MPC revolve around maintaining price stability and achieving the inflation targets set by the government. We know that the RBI's primary goal is to contain the inflation at 4% with a standard deviation of 2% in the medium term. So, to ensure accountability, the RBI has to explain its actions in a report to the government if it fails to reach the specified inflation targets. Okay, now let us understand how MPC is constituted. See, the committee consists of 6 members. The RBI governor serves as the chairperson. See, the deputy governor in charge of the monetary policy is also a member. One official nominated by RBI board is part of the committee, and the remaining 3 members represents the Indian government. Moreover, the 3 government nominees are appointed by the central government based on the recommendations of Search-cum-Selection Committee. This committee includes the Cabinet Secretary, RBI Governor, Secretary of the Department of Economic Affairs, Finance Ministry, and 3 experts in economics or banking who are nominated by the government. Now let us see the process of decision making in MPC. See, the decision making in MPC follows a majority vote. If there is a tie, the RBI governor has the casting vote, which means his vote will be the deciding factor. Know that the committee's decision is binding on the RBI and it has to implement the recommended changes in the key policy rates. Okay, now to ensure accountability, the minutes of the MPC meeting are published by RBI after 14 days. Know that the RBI also publishes a document explaining how it plans to implement the committee's decision. We should know that the MPC meetings are confidential. Note that a minimum of 4 members, including the governor or deputy governor, must be present to constitute a quorum. Also, the RBI is obligated to provide necessary information to the MPC for its decision making. And know that if any of the member requests additional information, then that should be provided by the RBI. In summary, the MPC plays a crucial role in determining the repo rate and maintaining price stability in India. Know that it follows a committee-based approach to the decision making. This is all about the discussion. In this discussion, we saw about the structure and functions of the important economic body called Monetary Policy Committee. So with this learned points, let us move on to the next article. Look at this news. Towards the end of the fiscal year, the government is significantly increasing its spending. This has increased the fiscal deficit of the central government. So this is the crux of the article. In our discussion today, we shall learn about an important economic concept called fiscal deficit in this analysis. Firstly, let us know about the basic info about the fiscal deficit. See, fiscal deficit refers to the shortfall in a government's revenue when compared to its expenditure. See, when a government's expenditure exceeds its revenue, the government have to borrow money or sell its asset to fund the deficit. In simpler terms, fiscal deficit is when a government spends more money than it earns in a current year, which can have bigger implications for the country's economy and its society. Let us see the formula for fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is equal to total expenditure minus total receipts excluding the borrowings. Let us see what is the difference between fiscal deficit and national debt. See, fiscal deficit is the gap between the governmental expenditure and its revenue, as we have seen now. On the other hand, national debt is the total amount of money that a government owes to the external creditors and domestic lenders. That is, it includes the accumulated borrowing over the period of year. See, here a basic difference between the fiscal deficit and national debt is that fiscal deficit is the governmental loans in a current year, whereas the national debt resembles the accumulated borrowing over the years. Okay, now moving on to see how the government funds its fiscal deficit. Firstly, government borrows from the bond market. See, in order to fund the FD, the government mainly borrows from the bond market, where the lenders compete to lend to the government by purchasing the G-Secs or governmental bond which is issued by the government. Know that in 2024-25, the central government is expected to borrow a gross amount of 14.13 lakh crores from the market, which is way lower than the borrowing goal for 23-24. This is because the central government expects to fund its spending in 24 through higher GST collections. As a government finances worsen, demand for the governmental bond decides to drop. This will make the government pay higher interest rate to lenders and lead to higher borrowing costs for the government. Secondly, through revenue generation. See, governments can increase their revenue by collecting taxes from the individuals, business and other entities. See, they can also earn money through sources like selling governmental assets or levying fees for the certain services. Thirdly, cutting expenses. See, government can reduce their spending by cutting down unnecessary expenses, implementing austerity measures, or optimizing the existing programs to make them more cost effective. Next is the role of Reserve Bank of India. See, the RBI plays a significant role in the credit market, indirectly facilitating the governmental borrowing. While the central government may not directly purchase the governmental bonds from the primary market, they engage in OMO or open market operations to acquire the bond from the private lenders in the secondary market. This infusion of liquidity by the central bank effectively supports the governmental borrowing efforts. know that the central bank interventions through OMO will create fresh money, potentially leading to increased money supply and inflationary pressures in the economy over a period of time. Now, let us move on to see about the data about the current trends in the fiscal deficit. See, the fiscal deficit surged from 64% of the revised estimates in the January to 86.5% by the end of February. This indicates that government is spending more money than it's earning. See, the capex, which refers to the spending on infrastructure and other long-term investments, experienced a notable increase to 84,400 crores in February. This suggests that government is focusing on boosting the infrastructure development and investments. In absolute term, the FD reached 15 lakh crores in the first 11 months of fiscal year 2023-24. This means that the governmental total spending exceeded its total revenue by 15 lakh crores. Compared to the previous fiscals, the fiscal deficit for the same period was 14.5 lakh crores. This shows that there is an increase in the government spending over the period of years. Economists anticipate that the final FD figures for the current fiscal years, which will be released at the end of April, will likely to be within the revised target of 17.3 lakh crores which was set by Union Budget. There is even a possibility that it might be lower than the target, which is equivalent to 5.8% of the GDP. We know that the center aims to reduce the FD to 5.1% of the GDP, relying on 11.5% increase in the tax collections. There is also plans to cut the expenditure on the fertilizer and food subsidy. The government also plans to raise tax to meet this target. See, in simple terms, the government has been spending more money than it's earning, particularly towards infrastructure and long-term investment. See, this leads to the rise in fiscal deficit. However, it is expected that the FD figures will stay within the budgeted target, or it may even be lower, indicating that the government is having a control over the spending. See, this is all about the discussion. In this discussion, we saw about the basics of fiscal deficit, and in the second part, we saw about the current trends in the FDs. This is all about the discussion. Now let us move on to the other articles which appeared in the today's newspaper, but we have covered it elaborately in the recent times. They are, firstly, with respect to electoral bond schemes. See, this is criticized for potentially allowing the anonymous political donations that could lead to unfair practices like company giving money to parties in hopes of getting the favorable treatment. See, despite being intended to make the political funding a cleaner one, there are worries that it would actually make things less transparent and could be misused. The second article of the day is that the Kerala government is upset because its governor and president of India have not approved several laws that it wanted to pass. This is causing tensions not just in Kerala but in other states too, where local government are facing similar issues with their respective governors. See, basically the Kerala government thinks that this delay is unfair and it asking the Supreme Court to step in and sort the things out. See, these are the two other articles which appeared in the newspaper and are very relevant to the examination. Now, let us move on to the next part of the discussion, that is to discuss the preliminary practice questions. Today I am having 4 questions. I will solve 3 of them and one will be the quiz question for you to solve. See the first question. Consider the following statements. According to the Elephant Corridors of India report 2023, West Bengal has the largest number of identified elephant corridors in the country. See, this statement is correct because this report provided that West Bengal has the highest number of corridors. Know that WPA does not specifically mention corridors. However, the WPA does provide for the protection of natural habitats of the elephants. See the second statement. The elephant in India is protected species under Schedule 4 of the WPA Act 1972. So this is wrong because as we all know that elephants are protected species under Schedule 1 of the WPA 1972. See the third statement. WPA 1972 does not specifically mention elephant corridors. See, this is correct as we have seen in our discussion. So the statement 2 alone is wrong. So the correct option is option B. Let us move on to the second question. Which of the following statements regarding AFSPA are correct? See the first statement. It can be implemented in area only after it has been declared as a disturbed area. See, this is correct because as we know in our discussion that AFSPA can be implemented only after the area can be demarcated as a disturbed one. See the second statement. According to AFSPA, the union government can declare any area as a disturbed area without taking the consent of the state government. So this is correct because the AFSPA provides authority to the union government to declare any area as a disturbed one without the consent of the respective state governments. See the third statement. Since 2018, no new area are placed under disturbed area list by the union government. See, this is incorrect because recently CHOCAM in Arunachal Pradesh has been declared as a disturbed area. Also note that AFSPA was lifted from Tripura in 2015 and Meghalaya in 2018. So here third statement alone is incorrect. So the correct option is option A. See the third question. Consider the following statements about MPC. See, the MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, consists of members from both government and RBI. See, the statement 1 is correct because MPC consists of 6 members with 3 getting nominated by the government and 3 coming from the RBI. See the second statement. The decision of the MPC are binding and have to be implemented by the RBI. See, this is correct as we have seen in our discussion. See the third statement. The MPC is responsible for fixing the benchmark interest rate in India. See, this is also correct because MPC determines the benchmark interest rate in India. So all the statements are correct. So the correct option is option C. The quiz question based on today's discussion is listed here. Interested aspirants can answer it in the comment section. If you like today's video, like, comment and share it with your friends. If you want regular updates regarding the UPSC preparation, kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel Shankar IAS Academy. Thank you very much.